I'm going to show you how to use a very simple, very powerful means of generating positive feedback that is particularly useful within a team of people who work together. This is really based on the premise that there isn't enough positive feedback in the workplace. People who work together, just take the helicopter noise out of the background. People who work together far too often withhold positive feedback, don't say the things to each other that they could, that would reinforce those relationships, that would point out to people what they do well. So this is all about positive feedback. Now, I've used this exercise for 30 plus years and I've had some very, very useful positive results. And I'd like to think that it's resulted in people doing things long-term better as a result. Anyway, I'll stop talking about it. I'll show you how to do it. The first very straightforward thing to do is to get everybody in a group to write their name. My name is Andrew. At the bottom, very importantly, at the bottom of the sheet of paper. So that's an unnatural thing to do. So most people want to write it at the top. It's always got to be at the bottom. So after that, what you get people to do is to pass their sheet of paper to the person on their left or their right. It doesn't really matter. In other words, everybody in a group, and the ideal group size is around about 10. You can stretch to 12, I guess, but 4 or 5 isn't enough. So for a group of 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, that sort of size, this works really well. So at the moment, all you've got is a load of people who have got the person to the left or to the right's piece of paper. So once they get that piece of paper, what they do is each person looks at it and you ask them to do one of two things, or both. You ask them to write at the top of the piece of paper, at the very top, up here, either a behaviour that they've seen that person do that has impressed them. So something I've seen this person, in this case Andrew, there must be something someone's seen me do. Well, something I've seen this person do that has impressed me. To write that concisely at the top of the piece of paper. And or this, a personality characteristic, something about this person that impresses me. So what you've got is two things to do, or just one, because one's enough. 2 is ideal, but it must be kept concise at the top of the piece of paper. And it's always best to actually leave these statements visible, obvious, and referred to during the course of the exercise. So how am I complicating this already? It isn't at all, because you're asking people on a sheet of paper with that person's name on it to write at the top of the piece of paper a personality characteristic. Now, I'm not actually going to write this down, but it could mean you end up with writing like that. Possibly 1, possibly 2 sentences. Then the key thing is you fold the piece of paper. Anyone old enough like me to remember consequences will know this. So you fold the piece of paper over, having written the 1 or 2 sentences. Key thing here is to encourage people not just to write a word. I don't know, nice, friendly, whatever it is. We want something more meaningful. We want something which is either or both of these statements driven. And that's why it's important to leave them up. So you end up then with saying to people, pass it now to the person on your right or your left. It doesn't really matter, to be honest, as long as it's in a continuous process. You don't change one to the other. It's either to the right or it's either to the left. So the person then, for the sake of argument, passes it to the right. You then get somebody's piece of paper which, over a period of a few minutes, not hours, that's for sure, the piece of paper gets shorter, more and more comments have been written about the person whose name appears at the bottom there. So this goes on for as long as it takes. I find for a group of 10, it will take around about 15 minutes, maybe 20. You'll be surprised. Some people find it harder to think of something in relation to these 2 statements for some people than for others. Some people know each other better than others. You might get told, well, I don't really know this person. I said, work off what you do know. We all fall first impressions. We've all got feelings about someone based on a few minutes. So don't let anyone cop out. So more and more of these happen, and you get further and further down the sheet of paper as it goes round and round. Don't get people to share it. Sometimes they want to show it to people. Don't do that. Encourage people to take it seriously. You might get a feel for if people are being a bit daft. You know, oh, something I've seen this person do is, I don't know, balance 3 paper clips on their nose. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for meaningful, useful feedback, positive feedback, and all the time emphasize positive feedback. So ultimately, with enough folds, some people might be writing a bit smaller or condensing their folds by then. If you need to go to a second sheet of paper, but it's always nice to keep it to one, you end up with a sheet of paper that comes back to you. And then, yes, get people to write feedback on themselves. People should know themselves better than anyone else. So Andrew should write feedback on Andrew. So once that's done, you end up with a piece of paper which typically is folded right down to the bottom. Now, another key thing. Don't get people to just open them up willy-nilly. 2 things to do. First of all, pause and tell people you're going to. Remind them that when it comes round to themselves, they'll have their own to do. When they've all finished, and that might mean waiting for a few people, when they've all finished and they're all keen to see what's on their piece of paper, I promise you that, it could be the most feedback they've had since their last year at school. So stop at that point. At that point, you've got a rich moment to say, how did that feel? What difficulties, what problems did you have doing that? Some people have a problem with repeating themselves. Well, I kept saying the same things. Well, that's interesting. Why do you think that is? Do you see people in the same sort of ways, through the same frames? Oh, I had a real problem with this person. Why is that? You don't need people to be personal. This is informal in the sense that it's not attributed. People know perhaps their handwriting, they know the order in which it was written, but this is not contentious stuff. This is positive feedback. If it was, I think this person's a complete pain in the backside, then it'll be different. But this isn't. This is about what impresses you about them. This is about what they do that impresses you. So it should be good, positive feedback. So for as long as it takes, not for half an hour, maybe a couple of minutes, just before they get opened up in a big flourish. This one's empty, but this one isn't. Here's one I did earlier, or here's one that was done on me earlier. Here's an example of one that was done on me, so to speak, many years ago. And the thing to notice when people are opening them up is typically there's smiles on people's faces. They like it. They're a bit surprised. And that's the sort of thing to draw out afterwards. What are you looking at? Are you seeing anything that surprises you? Some people aren't. Oh no, it's the sort of stuff I expected to be shown. And other people would say, well, I didn't expect this. And why did you say that? Says somebody. And then you end up with the silly ones, and they hopefully feel silly because they haven't engaged in it properly. Most people do, particularly if you emphasize what it's really all about. So this is an extremely direct, extremely efficient in terms of it's only a piece of paper and it's done very quickly. It doesn't require a lot of logistics. Exercise to generate positive feedback. If you've got 10 people in a room, that's 100 bits of positive feedback you're generating in less than 20 minutes. That's pretty good going. And it's something I know works because I've used it myself so many times. Imagine a top team doing this. That would be rather remarkable, wouldn't it? I've done it once or twice. So if you want more on this, there you go. I'm keeping it informal. My website, which you can see a reference to there, has got more on this. Within the free resources section, and specifically team working, you'll see it down as a positive feedback activity. And there's a brief, it's a written brief about how to do this. But I thought I'd show you it first of all. And that's the sort of outcome that you get. And I've kept mine for ages, and I've come across people that I've worked with many, many years ago that have done the same, that have kept theirs, and have actually been keen to show it to me. So there you are. You might need to tell people when they're doing this that there isn't a negative one to follow, something that doesn't impress me about this person, something I've seen this person do that fails to impress me that I don't like, because that's sometimes what they fear, and that can clear their head to do it with a positive angle, which is good. So I recommend it to you. I know it's worked for me many, many times in lots of different contexts. If you want to contact me and find out more or explore it further, then please do so. Alternatively, as I say, that's where you'll find it on my website. Okay, there you go.